realize, before we get to some more college football notes, I saw some video clips or photos of the EA Sports College Football 25.
Oh, it looks smooth. It looks absolutely smooth and wonderful, and I cannot wait to play it. And I may have to, send my wife on a trip by herself for like a week so that I can.
Okay.
But, or get her into it, which I think it's easier to do the first one.
Well, Max is saying that he's going to let his kid go to daycare.
From 8:30 to 5, yeah. So is there a wife daycare? Is that a thing?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Men can have paternity leave now.
Yeah, I guess so.
Craig, there was a picture of the Cotton Bowl at OU, Texas. There's a couple of intricacies about the look that's in that game, that the tunnel, the teams were on the wrong side of the field. But to me, and I get it, I'm not one that nitpicks at it, but have you seen a couple of the clips, a couple of pictures of the game itself?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a couple of clips and the pictures and whatnot, and like I've said every time, I'm looking forward to probably getting and playing it, but I'm not like somebody that's into every little detail that's been talked about. I think it's been cool to kind of see the conversation around that and to see the excitement level that's building up, but the stuff like you just mentioned, I didn't notice that until somebody else did. I saw a random tweet about it, and it looks good. I would expect it to. We haven't seen a version since 2014, so It was bound to look a lot sharper than what we've been accustomed to. And you never quite know when they're dropping little hints here and there. But I think the stuff that has come out today is just adding more excitement for those who have been practically lining up to play. And so I can't wait to see, once everybody gets their hands on the game, all the different content and stuff that comes from that. I'm sure there'll be channels operating on just streaming the game for hours at a time and whatnot. But, it looks really sharp. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun, and I know there's probably some things they still have to tweak, but I have full faith that they'll put out a really quality product when all is said and done based on everything that we've learned so far.
There was a video clip of Ollie Gordon spinning away from an upcoming safety and on his way to a touchdown. That was pretty cool, too. So let's get to some college football business and more. The Big 12 today had their conference business meetings wrap up. We're going to hear from Brett Yormark with a couple of 2 or 3 of his comments in a minute. But let's start by opening up with a couple of stories that led to what some of the questions that he was asked today up at the Ritz-Carlton in Dallas. First of all, the NCAA, the settlement, college leaders are still not so sure how all of this fits with Title IX, including today Dr. Livingstone saying that there's still a lot of unknowns when it comes to how the revenue sharing and Title IX will mix.
2 separate questions in that press conference about it, and the reason I didn't pull them were long answers to say we don't know. And there's theories about how you can maybe build some things out and, see how they distribute based on the settlement, the 22% or whatever it is, and maybe you can build out the rules from that. But even that is like such a stretch. So that is, of all the really difficult things to have to work out, I really do think that is the one that's going to be the most difficult, because one misstep in that, and you're going to have yourself a mammoth lawsuit.
What did I say even 2 or 3 months ago about all of this eventual settlement that they were what was the one thing that might just turn everything upside down?
Yeah, it was Title IX. Yeah. And I think that all the parties know that going in, they've known for a couple years that this was coming. And then, of course, get down to the wire to do this. It's just, I don't know how much, because they didn't know the details of the settlement and what was to be distributed, that they could really make a plan for it. So now that they know that they can make a plan, they just have to be very careful about it.
Yeah, and Craig, there's I remember it was who was it? Hugh Freeze, when he was asked earlier this week about a 17-page overview, and he said, "What did you learn?" Or someone asked him, "What did you learn from it?" That we have more questions still than answers.
Yeah, I mean, that's to be expected, right? I mean, there's a lot that's unfinished and a lot that's unresolved. So, I guess they're, chipping away at trying to figure out what their next steps are. I've seen a lot of the Title IX mentioned, and I don't know. I don't have the answers. I find the legal stuff to be the stuff that makes my brain hurt the quickest and the most. And so I'm far from the right person to even begin to try and figure out how they sorting all of this out. But Title IX is obviously very important component in what everything looks like moving forward. So I'm sure there's a lot of people, especially on the female side of things, female athletic side of things, that are rightfully concerned about what the future looks like. I don't know if it's to the point of, you need to be alarmed yet, but I definitely think you need to be on your tippy toes, your P's and Q's, ready to figure out what direction the wind's blowing here, because there's not a lot of certainty out there, that's for sure, and that's worrisome. I'm imagining for a lot of people out there.
Well, also, there's the Ross Dellinger, who will join us today at 4, the NCAA justice settlement. Paul?
So what this means is they can't make any rules anymore affecting transfers. Like, that's it. Like, they've agreed to it. The NCAA can't say you have to transfer this. The only requirement they can put on it is academic eligibility, which no one's going to fight, because I would say that, like, if you're a student, you're like, I would like to transfer from South Carolina to James Madison. And I say that just because they're on TV right now. And James Madison's like, yeah, we'd like you, but you have a D- average. So,
like the running back that was at Louisville?
Yeah, like those things. Like, if you're not eligible,
who ended up at UCF,
then you're restricted. But schools also have that. And also, most schools are pretty good on eligibility anyway, because they have so many different requirements. It's not worth their headache most of the time, which is why I think you rarely hear about eligibility issues anymore, because that is actually something they've got funneled through pretty well. But also, it means that there'll be an extra year now of all the people who they...
Now, so you mean to tell me Cam Rising might be able to play 8 years?
Well, no, he was not denied a year. So anybody who was denied a year and had to sit a year...
Dre Edwards, women's basketball player at Baylor?
Yes, that one, Raekwon Battle, like anybody who lost any eligibility because of the rule change that they made gets that year back. So that's another thing that's come out of this as well.
Is the COVID year now done? I was going to say, are we immune from the COVID year? I'm not sure that's the right way to say it, but is that now through the system?
Almost.
And now we have this one?
Now we have this one, but this is a much smaller subset of people.
It's a never-ending – and again, oh, my God, let them play. The 8-year rule is what Conundrum said in the chat room. Craig, what are your thoughts now about yet another opportunity to continue a career, because transfer is now dated back to where anyone who was not allowed to transfer?
I don't know. It doesn't affect me any, so it doesn't really bother me if it's the opportunity those kids deserve. I don't love the idea of 7- and 8-year college students. I think that's ridiculous. I mean, if you're a student, just a plain student, then, hey, more power to you. I think if you're an athlete, it's silly. But the COVID year is just about done. This, like Paul just said, is separate, so it's not as though they're just – and, it's not like people who roll their eyes like they're just handing out just for kicks and giggles. Like, there's a method behind this, and I don't know why people would be upset about some random kid at Youngstown State getting an extra year. Like, why do you care anyways? Yeah. You know what I mean? So this is fine, good for the athletes. I think it's silly that – we've had 7-8 year student athletes, like I said at the top, but, this is, I guess, just tying up more loose ends. And, I don't like the idea. I've seen some people on Twitter when they speculate about the future and whatnot of, like, the whole, the NFL mode's basically there's been at least some tapping of the brakes on that with all the stuff that's happened here recently. The whole idea of the Super League and everything like that's not as, fast and furious coming down the pipeline as it once was. But for those folks who I've seen, like, gone really far of, like, this will basically just be the NFL, and they'll rent out the college logos, and they won't go to class and all that kind of stuff, I think that's silly, and I don't think anybody would be interested in seeing a guy at FSU playing in, like, his 12th year as the center. Part of the fun of college is that you have the rollover. Part of the fun is you're not playing with the same guys for 12 years at a time. So I do think that's, there's a reason behind this, and pretty soon that'll all get its way through the system, and I think we'll return to some sense of normalcy. But it has been weird these last few years seeing so many super veterans playing college athletics.
All right, before we get to some comments from Big 12 Commissioner and some news on the Big 12 from Brett Yormark, Paul has a box in front of him. Mully, he's wearing a golf shirt. Craig's wearing a Mully golf cap. I'm wearing a Mully golf shirt. Paul, tell us about Mully.
So Mullybox is a monthly golf subscription service, and they sent some boxes to us. And like in the box, you're always going to have a shirt. They've got this hat here. This I didn't even open
I think
this yet.
Isn't that a T-shirt? No, it's a golf rag.
Yeah, this is like
wipe off your clubs.
Wipe off the clubs. I've got a cool glove there, and we've got some. I don't know about
club head covers.
Club head covers here. So those are camo there from Villain. So different brands, you can kind of customize what you want in it. And if you're a golfer and want some cool stuff, 365 Sports, Mullybox, I'll put the link in the chat. It's also linked in the video, but 25% off your first box, 365 Sports promo code.
Behind Paul throughout the show today, behind our main screen here on the set. Now,
should I keep this here in case I get sweaty?
I'm the one that probably needs that.
Sure.
I'm the one that probably needs.
Comes in handy.
Now, Ross Dellinger, a couple of things, and there were others who had this, but Ross reporting, the Big 12 today reporting that they distributed $470 million. That's the most ever. They also had more teams. That also did include Texas and Oklahoma. He acknowledges there was some dilution. For example, we asked Mack Rhodes about this several months ago, about the fact that the schools who are remaining and not leaving with Texas and OU would probably lose some revenue because of the incoming four. And Brett Yormark made this comment about that.
We're discussing revenue share, obviously. We have a formula, and we understand what those numbers look like. As Linda said, we're going to compete. We're going to compete at the highest levels. We're going to continue to invest. And, athletics for the right reasons. As I said earlier, it's the front porch of our institutions. It's very meaningful. And we're going to embrace the change for all the right reasons. I think it's incumbent upon the conference, to do more and to provide more resources. And I'm focused on it. And we've spent a lot of time with the ADs talking about how they can grow their own resources on campus. We can be better together collectively, but we're embracing it, and we understand that's the new next chapter, and we're going to continue to compete at a high level.
All right, that's one of three comments we have that Paul broke down from today's press conference. Dr. Livingstone was also a part of that. Now, one note is the private equity of trying to bail some schools out.
Yeah, so let's tie this in. So this is a quote, and I saw Brandon, everybody saw open for business because he said that before when it talked about expansion. So go ahead and put that up. What he did not mean expansion. It did not mean expansion at all. They're not expanding. He's not actively looking at expansion. He actually answered that question pretty quickly. No, I'm not. But what he was talking about is other business opportunities. And when asked about that and private equity, he did not sound like a guy who was afraid of it.
Yeah, because we've heard others who are beware of that.
Yeah. So go ahead and hear here's
Brett Yormark on private equity and the option there.
Well, listen, it's my job to provide opportunity and possibility to the conference on a daily basis and to make sure that I'm aware of what's happening. Yes, private equity has been out there in the news, and obviously a lot of people are thinking about private equity. I think in some respects, private equity is a validation of where this industry is going and the growth trajectory that we're all on. So I don't look at it as a bad thing. In fact, I was in the NBA when private equity started coming in. You're seeing that the NFL is about to open their doors for private equity. So it's not foreign, and certainly not foreign for me. But I do think in some respects it's a validation because, private equity likes to go to places where, industries are in the growth mode, and we certainly are in the growth mode.
All right, there's Brett Yormark on that. And after that, Joseph Duarte, the Houston UCF, we knew this. There was a little bit of confusion about a year ago about exactly how much the four incoming schools would get. They get $18 million for UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston, $19 million next year. Full share starts in a couple of years. And then, of course, you have the incoming Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado.
And so the most interesting thing about this was it was asked about because the four teams that were G5 schools, BYU, UCF, Cincinnati, and Utah, those schools without the full share, when it came to House versus NCAA, would they have to pay what the G5 schools are paying, or would they have to pay Big 12 schools? And Brett Yormark here says basically they're paying like Big 12 schools now. So there you go, Garrett.
I mean, I'll take that, guys. I mean, we're all one big team here. And it was before, the G5 schools all unanimously, all 4 of them voted for settlement. I think we, from a conference perspective, and obviously Linda, we did a good job educating all of our members on what settlement would mean and candidly what the alternative was. And we all rallied around settlement. I think it gave us an opportunity to kind of co-author to some degree the future and not be dictated to what that future looks like. So all of our members embraced it, and we came together at a time where we needed to, and we had a single voice.
I like what he said there, Craig. We did not want to go into where the future is dictated to us.
Well, yeah, because that's basically what they've allowed to have happened with every single thing that we've talked about for the last 3 years. That's what they opened the door for by not acting on anything. So instead of having control over their future, college athletics just said, we're not going to do anything until you make us. And then we're just going to be fat and happy until you force us to do something different. And then once the powers that be decided, like, oh, no, you are going to be sued and you are going to be challenged, then you were forced into action, and your future is being dictated, as in you're having to settle these lawsuits. You're having to figure out how much each school is going to have to pay. So what a novel idea to be proactive. What an amazing concept to be proactive. And that's what it just sounds like they're doing, is they're being proactive and realizing, especially in his shoes, that they don't have a lot of room for error, and there's a questionable amount of how much growth there is, but he's going to search every nook and cranny to try and figure out like how they can boost their ammo and try to make this as lucrative as it can possibly be. But you can't do that by sitting on your hands and just waiting for it to come to you. You got to be proactive. So I think that's just a logical business move, is to be on the lookout for how you can do that. And part of that is to say, like, hey, here's a huge thing that we could be battling. Let's go ahead and just nip it in the bud and have one less thing to worry about. Let's go ahead and agree to these settlement terms. And that's why everybody did it, because they realized the challenge that otherwise would have been presented was far larger and far more dangerous to the entire enterprise. And so, yeah, that just made sense for everybody. And that's why you saw everybody fall in line in the span of days to sign and say, yeah, we too are going to be a part of this settlement agreement.
There's a note or two we'll get to about Clemson, the ACC, and much more, but we'll also have a note here from John Wilner. But Craig, go ahead.
I want to ask Paul, so you listened to this whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing I saw after this was over with was the Ross Dellinger, the Big 12 is open for business, and immediately everything I saw was Oregon State and Washington State are joining in August. Here come the ACC teams. Like, all this, everything was about realignment. So you're saying that was not about realignment?
No, when he was asked directly about it, like, it was so short, I didn't even bring it up, because
let's
like,
discuss what happened, because I didn't listen to it, and I sent that to Garrett.
Yeah,
that's the one line, is the line that you just showed.
So no, I listened. It was a 35-minute press conference, and honestly, I could take 27 minutes out of, we don't know what's going to happen with Title IX. We don't know what's going to happen with NCAA versus House, and surrounded by general ideas about how they might do that. But when it came down to, I can't remember who had directly asked him, so are you actively seeking expansion? He couldn't say no fast enough. No, when I say open for business, that's why he talked about, that led into private equity questions and Big 12 Mexico and all the other things that they're trying to do to increase revenue streams had nothing to do with expansion.
Okay.
All right, well, hold on. Garrett, do you have the one, the Joseph Duarte about open for business? Can you put that one up? Because there it is right there, Craig. So that was the one that Paul was just talking about.
Well, the way that I saw it come down was there was the quote from Ross Dellinger, and then I suppose there were probably others as well, but he's the one that I saw that said, what was the other line about, what was the one we showed right before that? I'm sorry. Whatever that said.
Private equity?
No. Okay.
The distribution?
No, it was what everybody just took for being about expansion. It was,
the open for business.
Yeah, the open for business. Everybody took that as the expansion, and then I guess he turned around and said, no, I'm not. And then they're like, oh, he's covering his ass, and he's
no.
So he wasn't even talking about that.
His open for business meant actual business.
Okay,
like that's what it meant.
Because that's what he said last summer.
Adding revenue streams, et cetera.
But that's what he said 2 years ago. to us. He said it last year. And so I think people now hear him say open for business, and they say, or they assume and they feel that's him saying expansion. So he was talking about actual business.
No. His open for business is, I mean, look, it may be down the line, it includes expansion, but open for business to me is his talking point. It's his, buzzword.
He actually said that it's kind of the conference mission statement.
They're open for, mission statement. Thank you. Open for business means they're open for business. And right now, expansion is not the business they really need to worry about.
Well, especially looking at the payouts. I don't see how those get larger by adding more mouths, but okay.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you. That is one of the things they said about, he said dilution in the thing, the quote we played earlier about there's some dilution there's more teams and more distribution, so it's a little less money for everybody. Well, now his job is to find ways for the 16 teams that exist in the league as of a month from today, or I guess yesterday, but a month from now.
Tomorrow, whatever.
Yeah. So once June is over and they have 16 full teams, he's got to find ways to make more money for them, the 16. Not more like everybody's like, USF and, and we're going to get Boston College and Syracuse and San Diego State. No, it had nothing to do with expansion. And I'll tell you this. If any jamoke on the internet tells you it had something to do with expansion, they didn't listen to this thing and don't follow them.
Okay.
Jump right off of it. It had nothing to do with expansion.
Okay, that's why I asked that, because when it came across on Twitter, as you know, that can come across a different way. That's all anybody took it for from what I was reading. And so you have the context, you actually listen to it, and that actually makes way more sense that he would be talking about actual business, because as you saw with the payout, like the dilution that he speaks of. And so my whole thing, even going back to last summer when we did the entire pact thing for it to end, only to then 2 days went by and it's like, this is happening now again. And it's like, we just did this for 2 years. And my whole thing was where's the money? Where does the money come from? And
by the way, the teams that remained that were a part of the Big 12 last year, including Texas and OU, knew that the money would be less this year because of the incoming 4, even though those 4 got a partial amount of the money.
And that's not to say that there's no chance of of course, if the ACC falls apart, I bet they're ready to strike and they feel like Louisville would be additive or whatever. But I'm trying to get clarification, since you actually listened to it, for everybody, because I think we're all probably seeing the same things and seeing how that's been taken and ran with as something maybe it wasn't originally. So that's why I'm deep diving with you here on what you heard. So, yeah, that's interesting.
All right, so there you are with that. Now, let's go past the John Wilner thing. We'll get to that in a minute. Matt Baker, our good friend from the Tampa Bay Times. Clemson has filed a motion for partial summary judgment in its suit versus the ACC in South Carolina. Could lead to a faster ruling of the grant of rights and who owns Clemson's TV rights if the Tigers leave the ACC before 2036. Clemson or the league. And then the best part, and in fact, Matt Baker said this, the filing is heavily redacted to protect the confidentiality. They know the contract. They've been given the contract, but they can't mention the contract or they can't give out that information. And so that's the filing that's been completely blacked out.
Yeah, there's a non-redacted part of that the judge can see and the attorneys can see. But for us, we just know that with the first line of that, and that's all we know.
Yeah, and that's because they're allowed to look at the deal, but they're not allowed to discuss it with anybody. They're not allowed to share it unless it's a part of the lawsuit and those involved in the lawsuit.
Yeah, and I think we saw the way the other conferences got involved and said that they don't want that type of information to be made public. I don't see the benefit of it, really. I mean, the opening of the TV contracts. I mean, I know there's a lot of investigators that would love to just get every little detail, and online investigators that just love that kind of stuff and would love to see all the ins and outs of it, I'm sure. But I don't think the general public really needs to see the TV contracts. I think the parties involved are the ones that matters here. So if they're happy, Clemson, with what they saw, and that leads them to believe they've got a way out, then more power to them. And that was kind of the sentiment I got. Yeah. I don't know if it was legitimate or not, but the sentiment that I came across was that this was good for Clemson and FSU.
Well, I would say that if you feel confident enough to ask for like a partial judgment in this, where that you can get the issue of who owns the TV rights, that if that issue is ruled upon that Clemson and FSU and everybody owns their own TV rights and they're leasing them out, then you're not talking about a grant of rights. You're talking about taking your TV rights with you to wherever you go, and then that's obviously like your share of that. And then what you'd have to pay is no longer a grant of rights. It's just an exit fee. And that would seem to excise that. And then you can start negotiating the exit fee and the payments on that. So the bigger deal was like, okay, you've got a $150 million exit fee and you're not going to have any TV revenue and that's all going to them. That's essentially winds up being a $400 million exit fee, which is not tenable for anybody. But if it's $125 million exit fee that you pay out over time and you get to keep your TV rights, then that is something that they want. So I would think that this, yes, if they can get a judgment on this, it depends. I mean, the judge may go, we need to hear more. And the only benefit to having the TV contracts even discussed being out is so that this could move along quickly. And, they could use some things like Florida's Sunshine Law or South Carolina to kind of push those along to get these judgments, especially outside the North Carolina case where the schools feel like it would be less friendly to them in North Carolina. They can, move it along and do that, because I don't think they really have any interest in people going, oh, really? This is how ESPN did this network deal? I don't think that's in everybody's best interest, other than all of us to know.
Well, I think the more clarity, the sooner the better on the whole ACC situation, because then we can really get into the fun part, I think, of, okay, they are leaving, or it's official. They have their way out. They can leave by 2025. I think that's when the real fun begins, because then it gets real. I mean, I know we all know that's going to happen eventually, but, I mean, having it happen in 2025 or 2026 versus 2036, Lord willing, we're doing a show at that point, but I can't guarantee it. 10 years down the, out, or 10, 12 years outside of that time frame right now. But, yeah, it did seem like there was some positivity on the Clemson side of things from this, if it does, in fact, lead to, I guess, as Matt phrased it, a faster ruling. So, yeah, this is the case that is right in the crosshairs for obvious reasons, and of a lot of interest for obvious reasons.
There's one Big 12 team playing right now in the college baseball regionals, West Virginia in Tucson, leading Dallas Baptist 4-0. Tonight, Big 12 games, UCF playing Alabama. You have Texas and Louisiana. And, oh, by the way, yes, they're still part of the Big 12, although they're going to celebrate that change in about a month, as will Oklahoma. Kansas State playing at Louisiana Tech. And then also Oklahoma down the road. They have, of course, they have a part of the regionals, too. I don't think I left Oklahoma State at home against Niagara. One quick note, and then we break. Luka Doncic and also Kyrie Irving and the Mavericks have advanced to the NBA Finals. Here's a Mark Cohen tweet, Garrett. TCU's director of media relations.
We trimmed this because we took it out of the stack so we could get all the things in.
Do you want to let me know that next time?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's a funny tweet. The tweet is that the Mavericks, when they have made the NBA Finals, the years they've been in the Finals, which I think was, 10 and 11? There was maybe 3 years. They have TCU won 11 games or more each of those seasons.
Well,
how random is that?
It is very random.
That was Andy Dalton's team. That was the first year, I think. The next year when they and then I don't know what the other year the Mavericks were in the Finals, but that they've won 11 games or more in those 3 years that they've been to the NBA Finals.
Well, I mean, if that history holds true, good for TCU. But I'll tell you, Luka and Kyrie were as locked in as any two players I've ever seen in a game last night. And Luka yelling, "Who's crying now, MFer?" over Snoop Dogg's head at the guy behind him who taunted him.
Snoop Dogg laughed his butt off.
Yeah. It's their third finals that they'll be appearing in. They were in it 2006 and 2011 when they won the whole thing. So, yeah, they never went back-to-back. There was that first appearance against D-Wade and the Heat, and then they lost, and then they had about a 5-year gap, and then they came back and beat the LeBron and D-Wade and Chris Bosh Heat in what was a stunner and was the Dirk Nowitzki show. and really solidified his already incredible legacy, Hall of Fame career, just put the cherry on top of that. So here they are, and it's 12 years, 13 years later now, and making their third finals appearance. And yeah, as a Mavs fan, I'm absolutely elated. I don't want to sound like I'm on the team, but job's not done. Like I don't celebrate. I celebrate a little bit last night, but it's not like I'm going to go buy the conference champs t-shirt. I want to buy the NBA champions t-shirt. So that's what me and a lot of other Mavericks fans are hoping to be able to do here in the next couple of weeks. But it'll be a really tall task against the Celtics. That's going to be a really tough matchup, and they won't be the favorites going in. But I like your chances whenever you have that Luka Doncic guy and that Kyrie Irving guy. And, yeah, Luka, 20 points in the first quarter was sensational, talking trash to the fan in the stand who decided it was a good idea to basically poke the bear, and not realizing that he's got that Jordan in him or that Kobe in him, where, like, the last thing you should probably do is piss him off in the heat of battle, and that's exactly what a Timberwolves fan did. Now, he can be sensitive for sure, but he's got that dog in him, for lack of a better term. I mean, he really does have, like, that stone-cold killer mentality when it comes to, putting a team away, and I think you saw that in the first quarter last night when he, went insane with 20 points right out of the gate, hitting some crazy shots from the logo at half court. He's so incredibly special, and this Kyrie partnership has worked out better than anybody outside of Brass in Dallas could have imagined it, because certainly no media was sitting there championing it at the time, and I didn't have a good feeling about it. Most Mavericks fans I know didn't have a good feeling about it, but it's turned out to be an incredible ride. It's not done, but very cool to be in this position for sure.